They don't just live in the woods, they hunt. And if you're hearing this, pray you never take a wrong turn down a Georgia back road at night. My name is Amos Caldwell. I've been a ranger in Rabun County for nearly 20 years. I know these forests better than I know my own home. Every trail, every fire road, every hidden creek where hunters sneak off during the season. I've spent nights alone under the canopy when storms raged through, and I've tracked down more lost campers than I can count. But nothing in my training prepared me for what I saw when I turned off the main highway that night. It was late, fog thick enough to make the moon vanish. My GPS cut out, the road narrowing into gravel, twisting deeper into the trees. I told myself it was fine. I'd backtrack once I found a place to turn around. But the deeper I went, the more the woods seemed to lean in, pressing close, shutting out the world I knew. That's when the eyes appeared. At first, I thought they were deer, two pale reflections glinting at the edge of my headlights. But then another pair appeared, and another, higher, wider apart, crouched low like they were waiting. I slowed, my truck groaning on the loose rock, and rolled down the window just enough to listen. That's when I heard it. A voice. It was faint, but close enough to freeze me in place. "Over here!" It didn't sound right. Words strung together in a broken rhythm, like a child repeating something they'd only half understood. I gripped the wheel, tried to laugh it off, told myself it was just an echo, until I heard another voice from the opposite side of the road. "Stay!" I knew better than to leave the truck, but something primal in me made me check the back. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out, and swept the beam into the trees. What I saw didn't make sense. They weren't animals, not with faces like that. But they weren't people the way you or I are either. Their eyes shone too bright, and their movements were too fast, too silent. Bare skin smeared with earth, hair matted, jaws slack and shifting, as if they couldn't quite form words. They crouched in the undergrowth, whispering in half-sentences, their voices carrying in strange, broken tones. My light shook in my hand. I backed toward the truck, but by then, the voices had multiplied. From behind me, from deep in the brush, from above where the branches swayed though no wind was moving. I slammed the door shut, started the engine, and floored it. But the gravel was loose, the tires spinning, and in that split second, I caught sight of something in the rearview mirror. 3 of them, standing in the road behind me. Just standing, their heads tilted, watching with a "Help!" I didn't look. I couldn't. I just hit the gas again, praying the road would spit me back out on the highway. By the time I reached the ranger station, it was past dawn. My truck was scratched from the brush, and there were prints in the mud where I'd stopped. Prints too wide, too long, shaped like feet, but bent at angles no foot should turn. I turned in the incident, of course. I wrote down everything, handed over the recorder I carry for field notes. But when the others played it back, the tape was warped. My voice was there, breathing hard, panicked, but the whispers, they said the tape was too distorted to make out. I know what I heard. I know what followed me. I haven't been back to that stretch of road since. But sometimes, when the night is quiet and the forest presses too close, I hear it again, the broken words threading through the pines. Stay. Go. Over here. And I know they're still out there, waiting for someone else to take that wrong turn. So if you're listening to this, if you're hearing my voice now, remember my name. Amos Caldwell, Ranger of Rabun County. I've walked those woods longer than most men have been alive. And I swear to you, what I saw was real. Don't go looking for them. Don't wander off the path. And if the road bends into fog and your GPS dies, turn back while you can. Because the feral people of Georgia don't just live in the woods. They hunt. And if they find you first, there won't be anyone left to tell your story. The road bent harder than I expected, gravel grinding under my tires. And when I looked down, the fuel gauge was already in the red. No signal on my phone, no towns listed on the last sign I'd passed. Just a cracked metal plate riddled with buckshot, pointing to places I'd never heard of. I should have turned around then, but the road kept pulling me deeper, and there wasn't enough shoulder to spin the truck without risking the ditch. I told myself I'd find a clearing, a driveway, something I could use to turn back. But mile after mile, the woods grew thicker, the air heavier. My headlights picked out shapes nailed to fence posts along the road. At first, I thought it was old farm junk, twisted wood or rusted iron. But as I got closer, I saw what it really was. Bones. Animal bones. Some arranged in crude patterns, some dangling by wire so they rattled when the breeze caught them. Skulls with antlers. Jaws pried open and nailed in place. Every fence post for half a mile looked like that. Like a warning someone had gone out of their way to make sure no stranger passed through without seeing. I rolled the window up and kept going, even though the air inside the cab was stifling. Then I saw the house. It sat back from the road, sagging porch half swallowed by weeds. The siding was gray, the roofline caved in on one corner. Any other night, I would have written it off as just another abandoned farmhouse. The kind you see all over the backcountry, falling apart in silence. But as I slowed the truck, I noticed something strange. There was light inside. Not steady, but flickering, like a bare bulb swinging on a wire. Every few seconds it would flare, then dim again, as if it was struggling for power. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, that made no sense. There weren't any lines running to the house. The nearest grid connection was miles back. I killed the engine, sitting there with my hands clamped tight on the wheel, staring at that porch. The woods were silent, too silent. Not a cricket, not a frog, not a single rustle in the brush. Just the hum of the cooling engine and the faint pulse of that flickering light behind the crooked window glass. Something moved in there. I thought it was a shadow at first, something cast by the failing bulb. But when the light dipped low, I could still see it. A figure slipping past the window, too tall for the frame, shoulders bent to fit under the sagging ceiling. It didn't move like it should have. It seemed to sway, slow and deliberate, as though it knew I was watching. I fumbled for my phone again, checking the signal, praying for even a single bar, but the screen stayed blank. No service, no way out but forward. So I just sat there, caught between the woods and that house with the flickering light. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. The front door was open. Not wide, just a sliver, as if someone had left it that way on purpose. And even from where I sat in the cab, I could swear I heard it, something faint, drifting through the trees, carried by the night air. A voice, a single word stretched thin, broken on the syllables. Come. I don't know if it came from the house or from the woods around it, but I knew then that I had made the wrong turn, and that something on that road had been waiting for me to do exactly that. I left the house behind me, refusing to look in the mirrors, refusing to slow down, praying the road would spit me out somewhere familiar. The fuel lights stayed on, taunting me with every mile, and the gravel track only seemed to get narrower, darker, closing in like the woods themselves were pushing me where they wanted. That's when my headlights hit it. Metal twisted and blackened, half sunk into the ditch. A car, or what was left of one. The paint had been burned down to bare steel. The roof buckled from heat. Whatever had happened, it hadn't been a simple fire. The doors were warped shut, the glass cracked and stained from smoke. I thought about driving past, but something made me stop. Something about the windows. I got out, gravel crunching under my boots, and lifted the flashlight. Inside, the glass wasn't just cracked, it was scored. Deep grooves, gouges dragged across from the inside. Like someone had tried to claw their way out. The dashboard was torn, the upholstery shredded down to the stuffing. I pressed my hand against the glass, and I could see the tracks of nails or claws, etched so hard they'd almost gone clean through. That's when I heard it. Laughter. At first, I thought it was children. High-pitched, bubbling, quick bursts of sound. But it wasn't right. The pitch was too sharp, the rhythm too fast. It wasn't one voice. It was many, overlapping, tumbling over each other in a way no human throat could make. The sound came from the trees behind me. Close, too close, circling like it was playing games. The laughter stopped all at once. I swung the flashlight across the ditch, the beam shaking in my hands, and that's when I saw it. Something moved out there, low to the ground, fast, not running, crawling on all fours, its limbs bent wrong, moving with a speed that didn't make sense. It covered 20 feet in seconds, then froze. The light caught it just enough for me to see pale skin stretched tight, shoulders heaving, a head tilted too far to one side. Its eyes caught the beam and shone white. It didn't flinch. It didn't hide. It just stared. And then, before I could breathe, it was gone. Snapped backward into the brush, vanishing with a sound like dry leaves tearing. I staggered back toward the truck, my hands numb, my legs unsteady, every instinct screaming at me to run, to get away. But I knew it wasn't just chance, not some stray animal spooked by my lights. They weren't animals. They knew I was lost, and they'd been waiting. I slammed the door of the truck and turned the key, but the engine sputtered, coughed, and died. The fuel gauge was buried, the tank bone dry. My breath fogged the glass as I sat there gripping the wheel, whispering to myself to stay calm. That's when it came. The sound I'll never forget. A branch. Snapping. Not far behind me. I froze. Every muscle locked. Another crack. Closer this time, and before I could reach for the flashlight, something yanked the door open with a force that tore me sideways. Hands, too many hands grabbed my arms, my legs, dragging me out across the gravel. I hit the ground hard, the air ripped out of me, my cries muffled as a hand clamped over my mouth. They didn't stop to tie me, didn't speak. They just pulled me deeper into the trees. The world tilted. Branches clawed at my face, my boots dug trenches in the dirt as I fought against them. And then, the forest broke open. A clearing. The light struck me first, not moonlight, but fire. Fires made of trash and tires stacked into black columns, their smoke choking the air. The smell of burning rubber mixed with rot, a stench that clawed down my throat. The flames hissed and popped, casting jagged shadows across the figures that surrounded me. I swear they weren't supposed to be real. Tall, thin bodies, their skin streaked with scars and burns, bones jutting sharp under too tight flesh. Their faces looked human, but wrong. Features stretched and collapsed in ways that made them seem both familiar and alien. Eyes too far apart, noses collapsed into flat ridges, mouths split with missing teeth. Their hair hung in greasy mats, clotted with mud. One of them stood taller than the rest, a ragged shape in the firelight. Draped across his shoulders was a jacket, faded blue, torn at the sleeves. I knew that jacket. A police officer's. The patches had been ripped away, but the shape was unmistakable. He wore it like a trophy, chest heaving, his eyes locked on mine. They began to circle me, their bare feet crunching against the glass and metal shards littering the ground. The fire lit their faces and they made sounds, low at first, then louder. Grunts, broken syllables strung together. Stay, stay, stay. It was language, but fractured. Bits of English warped by tongues that had forgotten how to shape the words. I tried to scream, to beg, to tell them to let me go. My voice cracked, high and desperate. And that's when one of them crouched close. No more than a foot from my face, its eyes wide and unblinking. It opened its mouth and repeated what I'd said, word for word, but wrong. The cadence was They dragged me to the far edge of the clearing, past piles of twisted junk and fire-blackened barrels, until I was thrown hard against the dirt. My wrists were bound with something rough, rope spliced together with wire and strips of leather. I tried to twist free, but every move bit deeper, cutting into the skin. When I finally looked up, I saw where they had placed me. A pit. Shallow, but wide. The firelight spilled over the rim, and inside, bones. Not deer, not bear, not the kind of trophies you find on a hunter's land. These were different. Too small in places, too long in others. Some still clothed in rags that might once have been shirts or trousers. Fingers scattered like twigs, skulls split, ribs stacked like firewood. Human. I gagged and turned away, bile burning my throat, but the stench clung to me, seeped into my clothes. And the ferals, those pale, scarred figures, they gathered around the pit like children around a toy box, grinning through jagged teeth. Two of them shoved at each other, clawing at my legs as if deciding who got the first piece. One tore at my boot, snarling with laughter, while the other struck him hard enough to draw blood. They were wild, snapping, screeching, fighting like animals over meat. Then a sound cut through the frenzy. Low, guttural, drawn out. The crowd stilled, parting, as another stepped forward. Taller, older, his frame bent but commanding. His skin was a map of scars, his face pulled tight as if time itself had shrunk it. He raised one bony arm, and the rest fell silent. Their eyes followed him, their heads bowed. He came close enough that I could smell him. Smoke, dirt, and something sour that turned my stomach. His hand pressed against my chest. Not hard, just steady, like he was measuring the rise and fall of my breath. Then he barked a word I didn't recognize. The others roared back in answer. I didn't understand at first. Not until they cut me loose. Hands tore at the ropes, yanking me to my feet, shoving me toward the trees. I stumbled, nearly falling, but they didn't strike me. They cleared a path, their eyes glittering in the firelight. their bodies swaying with excitement. That was when I realized what this was. Not an execution, not a meal, a game. The elders spat something sharp and final, and they shoved me hard into the woods. My knees hit the dirt, my palms scraped raw, but I scrambled to stand. Behind me, the fires roared louder, their voices rising in a fevered chant. They were letting me go. I ran. God help me, I ran harder than I've ever moved in my life. Branches clawed at my arms, roots reached up to trip me. But adrenaline carried me forward, blind, desperate, lungs tearing at every breath. The black pines loomed above me, their trunks packed so tight the night seemed to close in like a tunnel with no end. Behind me, footsteps. Not one pair, many. They crashed through the brush with a rhythm that didn't belong to men. Some pounded the earth close at my heels, heavy and eager. Others, God help me, I heard above. Above, clattering along the branches, leaping from limb to limb, keeping pace overhead like predators that knew the forest belonged to them. And then came the sound that still chills my bones more than the screams, whistling. 2 notes, short, sharp bursts, one to the left, another to the right. They answered each other, calling back and forth through the woods. Not random, patterned, triangulating me, driving me where they wanted. I veered downhill, half sliding in the dirt, and found the creek. Cold water splashed my legs as I threw myself into it, the current sucking at my boots. I pressed my body flat, face down, pulling leaves and muck over my head, hoping the smell of mud and water would mask me. For a moment, all I heard was my heart hammering. And then, steps. Slow, careful. The water rippled beside me. A shadow fell across my face. I dared to lift my eyes, just a fraction, and saw it crouched there, inches from me. Its hands pressed into the mud, long fingers spread wide. Its head tilted, eyes glinting white in the dark, nostrils flaring as it sniffed. The stench of rot rolled off its breath as its mouth split into a grin. Its teeth, filed to points, caught the faint light. It leaned closer, so close I felt the warmth of its breath against my cheek. And then, a gunshot. Thunder split the forest, echoing off the hills. The creature jolted upright, snarling, eyes flashing to the trees. Behind it, voices shrieked and scattered, the whistles breaking into chaos. I stayed frozen, my face buried in the creek, praying the shot meant someone had found me, that someone knew I was here. For the first time all night, hope sparked in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I was saved. The forest went still after the gunshot, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Then, boots, crunching on leaves, steady, measured. A beam of light cut through the dark, sweeping across the creek. "Caldwell?" The voice, familiar, the sheriff. Relief hit me so hard I almost sobbed. I pushed myself out of the water, mud clinging to my face and clothes, my hands shaking as I waved toward the light. "Here! I'm here!" My voice cracked, broken with exhaustion. "They're in the woods! You have to—" The flashlight froze on me, blinding. I stumbled forward, my chest heaving, and then I saw him. Sheriff Danner. Badge glinting on his chest, shotgun cradled in his arms. Solid, calm, like a wall against the nightmare. But before I could take another step, movement stirred at the edge of the trees. The elder, the scarred one, taller than the rest, his body lit in jagged slices by the beam. He stood half in shadow, the firelight from the clearing still burning behind him. His eyes fixed on mine, unblinking. And then, he nodded. Not to me, to the sheriff. My stomach dropped, my legs locked. I turned back to Danner, but he wasn't raising his gun. He wasn't shouting orders. He just gave the faintest tilt of his head in return, the kind men give when they've reached an understanding. "You're lucky," the sheriff said, voice low, almost kind. "They like you. Not many get a head start." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The beam of the flashlight wavered, not to search, but to blind. My breaths came ragged, wet in my throat. My cries muffled as rough hands closed in again from behind. The recorder slipped against my chest as I was dragged backward, the last sounds catching on the tape. Heavy breathing, my voice breaking into a strangled plea. And then, silence.